of you.
That's very nice.
And they were clearly introduced to some of your experience through the trailer for All Saints.
That's right.
Which is really a film about your lives, isn't it?
That's understating it. Actually, it's the story of a church, a lot of people's lives, and a group of refugees from Southeast Asia. And more importantly, it's God's story of what He did in a certain place at a certain time. And I and my wife were lucky enough to be a part of it.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Tell us about the situation you faced when you were first called to be pastor of All Saints Church.
Well, I was right out of seminary, and my bishop appointed me to this church that had been really knocked back on its heels. And when I arrived, it was 25 members with an $850,000 mortgage, $5,500 a month mortgage payment, and $10,000 in the bank. Ooh. And it was no plum. My mother-in-law told the bishop when I was ordained, "Why did you give Michael such a crummy job?" And my best friend said, "Michael, if you pull this one off, you'll be a hero, and if you don't, nobody will blame you." But what we did when we got there, we did the math, and I arrived in the summer of 2007. We did the math very quickly and determined that the only option was to sell the church and the land that it sat on, to try to replant the church from scratch, maybe in a rented storefront or something like that. And we set the wheels in motion to do that. That was our plan. And then God had an entirely different plan.
Don't you just love it? When God's plans come together.
That's right. And it took a while for His plan to reveal itself to us. He had to put some other things in place along the way before we could really get to running. And that was the wheels for selling the church just moved so slowly, much slowly than we thought. And we thought we'd be out of the building by Christmas. We were still there in Christmas. And then we thought, well, we'll be gone by Easter. And we were still there in Easter.
The debts keep piling up with each month, though.
Well, this is what was wonderful. We thought that we were going to burn through that $10,000 by December. And when December rolled around, we still had $10,000 in the bank.
Every little step we took, somehow God amazingly provided for us. There was a check in the mail that came from somewhere. It was a blessing. Every day was a blessing.
Wow. Now, not to jump too far ahead, but I will. I was talking to my successor about a year ago, and we were talking, and I asked him how the financial situation was at the church these days. And he said, well, you know, some months expenses are higher, some are lower, but we always seem to have about $10,000 in the bank.
How about that?
And I'm telling you, that to me has always been like the cruse of oil and the little bit of meal.
Yes.
And All Saints has always had just what it needs and enough to sustain itself.
You hear that, honey? We always have enough to pay the rent.
That's right.
Had to tell my wife, you know what I'm saying?
It's good to remind ourselves of these things.
No, God showed me that long ago that, you know, I wasn't to depend on anything but Him.
Yeah, to have a helpless dependence.
I'm a God dependent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I count on Him, and I share Him with wherever I go because He's somebody you can always count on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So true.
Would you share with us a little bit of the backstory about the Southeast Asian family. What are their names again? Karen and Yi-Win?
The Karen. It's
Karen.
K-A-R-E-N. And
Okay,
they're
Karen.
an ethnic minority from Burma, or what is now known as Myanmar. They, in World War II, the Karen sided with the British against the Burmese government, who sided with the Japanese in World War II. And ever since then, once the British withdrew from Burma, the Karen had been persecuted by the government both for their ethnicity and for their Christianity. They're predominantly Christian people. And they have, many have fled across the eastern border of Burma into refugee camps in Thailand. And that's where this community that came to us in Smyrna, Tennessee, originated from. They were sponsored for relocation by the U.S. government under political refugee status to come to the United States. And there are communities of Karen throughout the U.S., mostly in the eastern part of the United States, but from as far north as New York to as far south as Florida and Texas.
How did they end up at All Saints?
Well, God sent them to us because we needed them.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that we were in the process of selling the church, which sat on 22 acres of land, 17 which was good old-fashioned bottom farmland. A piece of property I always thought was extravagant for a church to have. And when they arrived after Easter in 2008, they asked, they came to us looking for a church. They wanted a place to worship. And when Aimee was the first one to meet them at the door, and mercifully she knew what to say.
They had makeup on their faces. They had yellow makeup here because they had been in days of prayer, I found out later, praying and hoping and praying that the first person that they met would be a welcoming person. The first question that they asked me was, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" And I said, "Why, yes, I do believe in Jesus Christ, the risen Lord." And they said, "Does this church believe as you believe?" And I said, "Yes, it does. And we welcome you. Please come in, and I want to introduce you to my husband."
Wow.
So then they came down to my office and they said they were looking for a church and they needed help with food, clothing, transportation, employment, medical care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, oh goodness, this could swamp an already vulnerable church.
There goes the $10,000.
You got it. I told them we were broke. We were losing our church. I didn't see any way how we would be able to help them materially. But then instantly I'm thinking, I don't know what we're going to do about this, to what Jesus says. If someone comes to you and they are naked, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they're homeless, you do it to them, you've done it to me. You don't do it to them, you've not done it for me. And so there was no choice. If we're really going to claim the title of Christian, we have to be willing to do the deeds and not just talk the talk. And I found myself saying, look, I don't know how this is going to work out, but you all come on and we'll figure it out together. And that's what they did. Everything changed after that.
When Michael decided that the Holy Spirit came to him and said, "I want you to be ordained," the first thing that I said was, "Who am I to argue with the Holy Spirit?"
Wow.
Yes, I say yes to the Lord, and yes, I will support you. And I didn't know how that was going going to work. I didn't know how it would look. I had just had Atticus, so he was just a wee thing, you know, maybe 2 years old at the time. But when we left to go to seminary, Atticus was getting ready to go to kindergarten. I had on my plate the fact that I needed to support this family, and that was working as many jobs as I could. And that meant retooling my thoughts about a career. So thinking differently, using, you know, God's gifts in the way that He gave them to me, teaching, starting a choristers program, and He also gave me the gift of being able to sing with the opera company that was there in Milwaukee. Wow. So that worked out beautifully. And then when I was singing with that opera company and teaching at the conservatory there, I met someone who was a composer who composed an opera, a one-woman opera for me. So that worked out beautifully.
Wow.
So Christ was working in so many different ways, even because I, you know, just kept serving Him. And I think, all told, I think I worked 5 jobs during seminary.
Talk about saying yes to God.
Yes, and that was the beautiful thing.
And I think that's something I really want to grasp. You said yes to God, and your helpmate, your equal, your called partner in life said yes to God as well. And as a result, together you were able to follow the pathway that God had prepared for you, and He opened doors that you could not have possibly foreseen.
Yes, that's true.
What an amazing experience for us to learn from as a body of believers.
Yes.
Follow what God says to do, and He will work everything else out. How did you both work with the church and the Korean refugees?
Well, when they arrived, we began looking around for ways that we could help them. And this is one of the things that happened there. It wasn't just, I've been telling this story for a long time now, and for a while I thought that the miracle that happened at All Saints was that we saved the church. And it seems like in the past month, the penny dropped. And it occurred to me that, well, yeah, that was important that the church got saved, but the church got saved so that the life could happen there. The building was not the end in itself, salvation of the building. It was to provide a safe haven where people's lives could be transformed for service to the Lord. And we had a fellow, his wife was a regular parishioner of ours. And when she started coming to church with us, she asked him if he minded if she went to church. And he said, yeah, as long as I don't have to go with you. And then she began telling him about what was going on there, our work with the Korean. And he got curious and started coming around every once in a while. And then he was trying to quit smoking, and he came to see me and said he was having a lot of trouble. And we got to talking about matters of faith and that sort of thing. And he told me, you know, I don't even think I'm a believer anymore. So I pulled out, you know, in our church we have the creed, a statement of faith.
Yes.
And I said, well, let me just run some questions by you. Do you believe in God? And he says, well, yeah, you know, I believe in God. And I said, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Well, yeah, okay, I don't have any problem with that either. And we just went through the whole thing. And he didn't object to anything. And at the end I said, sounds like you're a believer to me. But here's what I think God has sent you to me for. God has sent you to me because He was stationed in Asia for the Marines, and he taught English as a second language to Southeast Asian refugees. And I said, God has sent you here to start an English language program for the Korean. And he said, well, you know, I'm still not quite certain about this believing thing. And I said, well, I don't want you to teach Sunday school. I just want you to teach them.
how to speak English.
But what happened to Paul was through the work that we were doing here, his entire faith life changed dramatically. And he'll tell you now, he said, I used to say I would never darken the door of a church again, and now I have the key.
Yes.
And that's just one story of so many transformed lives, people drawing closer to Jesus Christ through the work that went on there.
And that's the beautiful thing also about being there when we were there to watch the filming of the movie. Everyone, from the person who worked on the craft services table to the person behind the camera to even some of the actors, had their own faith journey and stories about how it was that they came to All Saints and how it was that they came to be part of that project. And they were moving stories, and each one of them felt a connection to the property, a connection to these fields.
This film is a must-see.
Yes.
It's an evidence of God, faith in God at work, and a tremendous testimony to your lives and how you have positively impacted the world right where you were. May God continue to bless you each and every day throughout your ministry. Mike Spurlock, Aimee Spurlock, let's hear it for them.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.